Thank you very much for the invitation to give this talk. Thank you to the local team for their hospitality, which is unparalleled. It's really a great pleasure to be here, and it's a great pleasure to be here face to face. You know, we are all human beings, and we miss interaction at the face-to-face level. So my talk today is going to be about the current and future treatments of inherited bleeding disorders. And I'll cover conditions, not just hemophilia. Here you see my conflicts of interest. I lead a group that involves monitoring adverse events, so that's why there are lots of companies at the bottom, because they're funding the monitoring of adverse events. And we have, that's a European group, we have one of the centers in Barcelona, but now that I know how the hemophilia care is in Barcelona, expect to hear from me, because we want all the centers to be part of this monitoring of adverse events. So, this is what I'm going to cover today. This is a summary slide, and I'll show it again at the end. And basically, what it tells you is what we have now and what is probable going to happen in the future. So, if we go on the left, this is what we have currently as our treatments for hemophilia now. So, as you can see, we have factor 8 and factor 9 that are either made from plasma or recombinant. And we also have the extended half-life product. This means that the products have to be given less frequently. These are widely available, and I know anybody with hemophilia in this room is probably has had exposure to these products. If you have an inhibitor, the current treatments are recombinant factor 7A, Novo7, or activated PCC, which is FIBA. The big development that happened since the last time I was in this city in person to give a talk to this group is the introduction of the bispecific antibody, or Hemlibra, and we'll talk more about this. In terms of the future, you can divide them into 4 groups. And people with hemophilia, it's amazing to see this degree of innovation for one genetic disease. And you may wonder, why are there so many new treatments for hemophilia? It's because hemophilia is an expensive disease to treat, and it's affected by one gene. So it's potential to develop new products. So there is a new extended half-life product for hemophilia A in development, probably be here in the next couple of years. When we went to the pediatric hospital here in Barcelona to see them yesterday, they had some patients on this product in the clinical trial. So they're already in this city, but they will become more widely available in the next 2 years. There are new bispecific antibodies, cousins of Hemlibra, going to be available. And again, we heard yesterday, these are already available in Barcelona in clinical trials, and patients are on them. There are rebalancing therapies, and I will explain to you how these work, and gene therapy will focus a bit more with the talk from Brian. So all of these are on the horizon, but actually, if you wanted to take part in a clinical trial in Barcelona, you probably could have any of those treatments today. So, this is the history of hemophilia in one slide. Really, no treatment before 1965 other than a blood transfusion. Cryoprecipitate was introduced in 1965, and factor concentrates in the early 1970s. And then we have the disaster of the early 1980s with HIV and hepatitis C. But the amazing thing of viral inactivation cannot be overstressed. So in 1984, all products were transmitting hepatitis C and HIV, and within a year or 18 months, basically that was eliminated because it was recognized that you could eliminate these viruses. And then in the 1990s, we had the recombinant factor 8 and factor 9. The extended half-life products were introduced about 7 years ago, and emicizumab or Hemlibra was introduced in the last 2 to 3 years. It varied by country to country in Europe, but it's now becoming more widely available. So when it comes to choose a product, you really have just 4 key things to look for. Efficacy, does it work? Safety, is it safe? Is it convenient, and what is the price? On the top right-hand corner, the regulators, you would expect the regulators not to approve a product unless it works and unless it's safe. And in this population, safety is key. We have to be sure that all products are safe as the number one issue. And then we come to the bottom, and that is price versus convenience. There is going to be an issue, because sometimes if you're not getting any bleeds with one product, how much more do you pay to get a more convenient product? So the next 3 slides summarize the products by specific conditions. So in hemophilia A, we have the standard half-life products, the extended, and emicizumab, as I mentioned. DDAVP is a really cheap product, but it only works in mild hemophilia. And in clinical trials, we have the ultra-long factor 8, the other products that were in my original slide. And at the very bottom, I've put in brackets 2 products that are in theory in development, but I personally do not think they will be introduced because of issues with side effects during the clinical trials. So I don't think the implantable spheres or the subcutaneous factor 8 is going to be the answer. In hemophilia B, it is very similar, except that Hemlibra, the bispecific antibody, does not work in hemophilia B, and we do not have an equivalent. So if you have hemophilia B, the current treatment is with factor 9. But the plus side of that is that the extended half-life factor 9 is dramatically better than the extended half-life factor 8. And there are new treatments in development for hemophilia B as well. In terms of hemophilia A with inhibitors, we've had FIBA and the Novo7 for 30 years. 7-FACT is a different version of recombinant factor 7, was introduced in the last year. And the big difference, if you have hemophilia A with inhibitors, Hemlibra has been the most dramatic improvement imaginable. These are patients who used to still have 50 bleeds a year, and you start them on Hemlibra, and 80% do not have any bleeds at all. It is a dramatic improvement. Hemlibra for inhibitor patients, to me, is a no-brainer. It's going to be the treatment of choice. In clinical trials, we've got the rebalancing agents that will work. We've got the bispecific antibodies. And gene therapy has already started in clinical trials in patients with inhibitors and hemophilia. Always when we give talks, we tend to forget that there are lots of other diseases that affect people that are not hemophilia. These are bleeding disorders that do not affect hemophilia. So in the middle, so on the left is the different rare diseases. In the middle is the current products, and on the right is what is in clinical trials. So I'm not going to go through each of them individually. For example, the bottom one, Glanzmann thrombasthenia, is a very rare disease. It's probably, in a city like Barcelona, there will be 100 times less patients with Glanzmann thrombasthenia than there are with hemophilia. So, and the treatment currently is platelet transfusions or Nova-7. However, there is quite an interesting antibody treatment given under the skin once a month. It's not Hemlibra, but it's the same idea that probably is going to be available for these patients. If you go for the factor 7, factor 10, the rebalancing therapies will work. Von Willebrand disease, if you have type 3 von Willebrand disease, there are some new treatments possibly going to be introduced. Hemlibra, it's already been shown to work, but in a small number of patients, and there is a new molecule that may have a role. Works. Yep. Okay. So this slide you probably cannot see, but you just need to see the colors. And this is what the UK has been using over the years. On the left is 1995, and on the right, 2019. In these gold bars is plasma-derived products. In blue is recombinant. In green there is the extended half-life products. And what you're saying, basically, the plasma-derived products in the UK are not widely used. The recombinants are, and the extended half-life products are increasing. If this was continued, it would be big changes because the extended half-life products will be the majority of the products, and Hemlibra will have an impact. And the same as here, the plasma-derived reducing, the extended half-life having much more impact because they're truly very long. So what is the difference between standard half-life and extended half-life? So if you have hemophilia A, you give 3 injections a week for prophylaxis. If you have the extended half-life product, is twice. So this is a difficult concept for patients to understand, is the half-life. What it means, how long does it take for the product you just given to yourself to only have half of it? So if you've given yourself 100%, how long will it be to get to 50%? So for factor 8, standard is 12 hours, factor 9, 18 hours. So when we talk about the extended half-life products, the factor 8 goes from 12 to 18. So it's a slight increase, but it's not a dramatic increase. For hemophilia B, however, it goes from 18 to 90, and that is a marked increase. So what it means in hemophilia B, you go from 2 injections a week to 1 injection a week. So really, the standard or extended half-life, you can think of them as very similar. It's just which one do you prefer? Because the efficacy is the same, the safety is the same, the price is different. The convenience is different. The convenience is different. One of them you give less frequently. Okay, so I'll next talk about Hemlibra, which has been the biggest impact over the last few years. So this is a slide that shows how Hemlibra works. So what happens in the clotting system, we've got the cell surface, and we've got the factors that are different factors, and they're going like this, and they're occasionally meeting. But we have some factors that bring them together. So in factor 8, which is what is available in hemophilia A, is missing in hemophilia A, brings these factors 9 and 10 together. So if you have no factor 8, these two do not come together very often, and you don't get any clotting. So what Hemlibra does is an antibody and one part of the antibody is against 9A, the other one against 10, and it does the same function, and it just brings these two factors together. So this is a summary of all the papers that have been published to date on one slide, and I'll take you through it to understand what it shows. Annual bleed rate. What the annual bleed rate is if you're a patient, how many bleeds per year would you have, taken on a population basis? So is it 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 10 there? So those of you will remember who are patients, if you have no treatment, annual bleed rate will be, if you're not on prophylaxis, annual bleed rate will be 20 to 50. With Hemlibra, this is after you start Hemlibra, this is in the number of weeks. So in the first 6 months, the average was 1.9, less than 2 bleeds per year. But as it went on, the average is less than 1 bleed per year. So on average, if you put 100 patients in Barcelona on Hemlibra, they would have less than 1 bleed per year each. And on the right-hand side, these numbers is less reliable because there were few patients going there. So people on Hemlibra can still get bleeds. They treat them with factor VIII in the usual way, but the number of bleeds is a lot less. So Hemlibra is available for treatment of hemophilia A with or without inhibitors. It's given under the skin once a week, once every 2 weeks, once every 4 weeks. All of them work equally well. The once a week and once every 2 weeks work equally well. If you're giving it just once a month, it may not work as well, but it's not dramatically worse. So in our center, the majority of patients are once every 2 weeks. When it was introduced, it was not used in very young children. So anybody less than 1 year of age, it was not being used. But what actually happened is something dramatic, and it started being used in children under 1 year of age. So people were skeptical. Will it work if you give a treatment to a child with hemophilia under 1 year of age? And everybody thought probably won't work, they're too young. But actually, it turned out it does work. So people now are starting on Hemlibra children with hemophilia A at less than 1 year of age. And the data are really pretty good. And as you can see, I put there 75% are bleed-free. This is a complication that people need to be aware that the clotting tests in someone on Hemlibra are normal, but that doesn't mean your clotting system is normal. And that's important because I've heard of a patient in Spain, not in this region, a patient in Spain, who went to another center because they were, for some reason, there. They went to the hospital, they were on Hemlibra, and they had a serious injury. So when they went to the accident emergency department, they had a blood test, and the clotting tests were normal. So they said, well, the clotting tests are normal, you can go ahead with the surgery. But it ended up being a very big problem. So what Hemlibra does, it converts you from having severe hemophilia to mild hemophilia. And other bispecific antibodies are in clinical trials, other treatments like this. And as I mentioned already, they are being used in clinical trials in Barcelona already. So as you can imagine, once another product comes on the market, the price is going to reduce. Okay, changing to the new ultra-long factor VIII treatment. And this is not extended half-life that you're all used to. This is even longer half-life, and it's a complex figure, but basically factor VIII is the blue part here, and the extended half-life that we've got now have this bit there that makes them longer, and this product basically supercharged by having 2 other parts to extend it. So during the clotting system, these bits are chopped off and you're left with this bit, so it lasts longer. To show you how long is shown here. So I showed you earlier that when you give standard factor VIII, it's 12 hours, the half-life, or 18 hours for the long-acting. So what you're seeing here, concentrate on this column. So if you have an injection of this product once a week, at 7 days, you're still having 18% factor VIII. And that's really impressive. On the right-hand side, you see what happens if you have the current product and the long-acting ones. And basically, if you want to get to 1% with the old products, it takes a day. With the new products, it takes 2 weeks. So how does that mean? What does it mean to you? It means if you're on prophylaxis, you can have it once a week. If you're having surgery, you can probably have surgery with 1 injection of factor VIII. That's what it will mean, which is quite impressive. Okay. I'm going to overload you with information, and I apologize for this. It's the only way I can give you a talk in 30 minutes. The next group of slides I've got is about another way of treating hemophilia. And it's a way of treating hemophilia that none of you, or none of us as doctors, thought about 5 years ago. And essentially what happens in hemophilia, in the body, we have factors that promote clotting and factors that cause bleeding. And traditionally, we've only concentrated on one side of the balance. And if you think of here, the balance is, you have as many blue balls as yellow balls or gold balls. So in hemophilia, you're missing some of the blue balls, so the balance is towards more bleeding. And what we do these days, until now, with treatment, we add more blue balls to balance the cascade. There is another way of doing it, however, if you think about it, and that's to take away these balls on the right and to rebalance the system. And there are 3 groups of treatment. There are actually 4 drugs, but one of them has got 2, in development. Doesn't matter how they work, the principle is the same. You're taking away the balls on the right. They're all given under the skin, most of them once a month. They prevent bleeds, but you cannot use them to treat an acute bleed. So, do they work? Yes, they do work. However, I told you, in hemophilia, number 1 priority is safety. Okay, we are not going to go back to the early 1990s again. We cannot go there. We have to consider safety. So the companies are investing huge amounts of money on this, but safety has to be the number 1 priority. Why am I stressing that? And it's an odd thing to talk to people in this room, that there is a possibility that we are stopping bleeding at the expense of causing thrombosis. And that cannot be acceptable, because the current treatments do not cause thrombosis. Well, they can cause it, but incredibly rare. So if you're on factor VIII, standard factor VIII, if you're a patient and you live 1,000 years, you're going to have a possibility of having 1 thrombosis with the current treatments. But if you look at the data, are not reported in the same way here, because there have been only 30 cases ever with emicizumab. However, if you look at these bypassing agents that I've just shown you, the rebalancing therapies, one of them, there have been 5 cases in the clinical trials. In the clinical trials, only enrolled about 150, 200 patients. One of these trials stopped because of thrombosis. One was suspended. So I'm personally so far not convinced this group of therapies are definitely going to be introduced. They have to be shown they're safe before we accept them. So in the last part of my talk, and Brian is going to talk to you about his own experience on this, I'm going to talk to you about gene therapy. And gene therapy has always been almost like science fiction. It's going to be in the future. It's going to be introduced one day. But the future is now. So this year, I am personally convinced we're going to get these products licensed. Gene therapy in hemophilia will be licensed. And the problem healthcare system will have is going to be the ability to pay for it. But it's important to appreciate what gene therapy is. Gene therapy is gene addition. People with hemophilia in the audience are missing a gene, and you're giving the gene back to the patient. They're not changing the genes in the patient. So if you have hemophilia and you have gene therapy, you can still transmit it to your daughters. Okay, that's important. It's not changing the gene of the patient. So this is what you do. You take the factor VIII or 9 gene, you take a virus, you remove all the bad things about the virus, and this one used is called at the moment, they're all based on this, adeno-associated virus, and you inject it, and it goes to the liver and makes factor VIII or factor 9. Very simple. However, there's big science behind it. What happens if you're going to have gene therapy? Well, having the gene therapy takes an hour or half an hour, and that's it. However, the whole area around it is so complex. So you really have to start talking to your team about, is it going to be the best treatment for you at this stage? And it's going to take months and months, because this is a one-off. You're not going to get a second chance of this. You're going to get one chance to have this gene therapy with this method. And then you have it infusion, and then there are loads of visits. You can visit the center twice a week for several months. Are you able to do that if you're working? I'm not so sure. It's going to be challenging. There are issues during this. And then you're going to, at the moment, a few years ago, they said they were going to be followed for 5 years, patients. Now they're talking about 15 years. My view is, once you have gene therapy, you're followed for life. So this is what happens. This is for hemophilia A. You get injected. And the factor VIII goes up, goes down a bit with time. And in hemophilia B, again, you have the injection, it goes up, and it stays up. What most of you in the audience do not know, do not look at graphs like this. So you see this, and when it's imported, when the companies report it, they show you something like this, and it's really impressive. Especially if they don't show it like this. They show it the way they want to impress you. However, what this shows, this is the factor 9 activity, and it goes from 0 to 100%. And this is week 1, and this is week month 18, 6 months. No, 18 months. What this shows you, this is the average. So if you treated all your patients in Barcelona with this, their average will be 35%. However, what this hides is these long bars. And this is the variation. So some patients, you have gene therapy, will have a level of 0 or 1%, and some will have 90. And you cannot tell as a patient which one it is. So on average, it will be 35, but as a patient, you cannot tell that. So variability is key. The other issue is durability. How long does it last? Well, in hemophilia A, it's predicted to last for 8 years. In hemophilia B, at least 10 to 20 years. The longest hemophilia B patients are a group in London that have been going for 12 years, and their levels haven't fallen. So we know at least 12 years for hemophilia B. So if you have hemophilia A, will you go for gene therapy? It's a big discussion you should have with your center, because the current treatments are pretty good. Will you go for this as a one-off shot? Or would you wait 5 years, 10 years to get something that is probably going to be better? That's going to be an issue for you. That's not going to be an easy one. What are the long-term issues? It's very sexy to go for something new. Yeah? New iPhone comes up. You find the people outside the shop to buy the new iPhone. However, what happens if they tell you that's the only mobile phone you're going to get in your lifetime? Would you want that if, say, you had one of those, flip phones without, a tiny screen, and it was 20 years ago? If you wanted a mobile phone and you knew that in the future may be better, would you go for that one? I'm not so sure. You would want to see what is in the future and which was better. And you want answers to, things like this. Is there a risk long-term of cancer? And what is the competition of gene therapy? Well, we've got alternatives, that are giving you 70% bleed-free at the moment. We've got the Hemlibra, we've got the injections, we've got the standard factor VIII, and in hemophilia B, you've got the alternative injections. So it's a difficult question. And Brian will give you his views, because he had to think about all of this when he was going for it. And what about other groups? At the moment, gene therapy is only for adults. And gene therapy for children is probably going to come in a different way, using lentiviruses, and it's starting in India. In some people have already antibodies to the virus that does the transmission, so that will not be possible at this moment to have it, except people with antibodies are already in clinical trials. People with inhibitors, the trials have started. And what about people with bleeding disorders other than hemophilia? What happens if you have factor VII deficiency, or 5 deficiency, or 10 deficiency? They're very rare. Will it come? Well, this is my view, okay? These clinical trials have not started. But I believe that it will happen for those patients. But I believe the way it's going to happen is going to be different. The companies are there to make money, okay? They have fund, people invest in them, and their role is to make money. And they're going to go for diseases. There are lots of patients. They're going to charge a lot and make money. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because we're getting a lot of innovation. However, if you have one of these diseases that are in 1 in a million or 1 in 2 million of the population, they're not going to make money from those. So these are the type of conditions that we're talking about. The companies will not make a profit, and they're not going to go for it. The technology is available today if you wanted to do it. So I think what's going to happen, I suspect what's going to happen, the technology will be approved, like the virus. This bit there is going to be approved. And then you have a cassette of the different ones being put in it, and is the technology that is approved rather than the individual drug. And you're going to put it in, and it's going to work. And I think the way it's going to be funded is by publicly funded. So it's possible that the European Commission will say, okay, for factor V, you go to Milan and have this. For factor VII, you go to, Madrid and have it, or Barcelona, or Brussels. And that's what's going to happen. And interestingly, people in the audience may not know, for Glasmann's thrombocythemia, there's a group in Spain that actually has developed it already in vitro, in the laboratory. It hasn't been tried in a patient yet, but they're looking, they cannot do it on their own, they'll need investment, but that may happen. So I think, do not despair if you have got one of these disorders. I think gene therapy will come. So, coming to the end, you saw this before, and we're ending up in hemophilia with a paradox of choice. If you have anything, if you have a condition, there is only one treatment, you really feel what this says. You're feeling a bit depressed because you haven't got a choice. But as soon as you have a choice of another product, you're feeling a lot happier. And that's what this is, a business book. It's nothing to do with hemophilia. So as soon as you have a choice, it makes you happier. So your happiness rate as you have a choice goes up. But as you have more and more choices, actually, it doesn't do this, it does that. Because you are finding it difficult to choose. How do you choose amongst all of these? And you will need listen to other people, listen to your health professionals, and come to a choice. So this is what you saw at the beginning. We have very good standard extended half-life products, bypassing agents, Hemlibra, but there are many more in development, and they're coming. This is going to be here in 2 years. I'm not sure about these ones. The alternatives are going to be here. The rebalancing therapies may be introduced, they're shown to be safe. Gene therapy is going to be licensed this year. So these products at the moment in Barcelona are available to you as part of clinical trials. However, I think for most of these will be available to you in the next, I would say, anything from 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. So in summary, we currently have many safe and effective treatments. There are multiple products in development. Gene therapy is likely to be licensed in 2022. Deciding which to choose is difficult, and non-hemophilic bleeding, i.e. the rare bleeding disorders, unfortunately those patients have less choices, both now and in development, but you have not been forgotten. People are thinking about you. And finally, if you want to be updated, follow me on Twitter, either me or Brian. And we tweet a lot about these things. And I know many of the people in the audience because I recognize your faces. And you've already told me, follow me. So thank you for your attention.